talks about aerobic respiration, and in comparison, anaerobic respiration is pretty simple. It's used by prokaryotic organisms which don't have a mitochondria, and some protists that inhabit low or no oxygen environments. So without oxygen, we have to use a different process. Anaerobic respiration begins with glycolysis. It breaks down into the pyruvates, and it makes two net ATP, two new ATP. And those are the only ATP that are created in the process of anaerobic respiration. Since these are relatively small, simple organisms, 2 ATP is enough for them. The steps that follow glycolysis serve to regenerate NAD+. Remember, NAD+ needs to come in and get a hydrogen to make NADH, but there are no more ATP produced. So there's 2 slightly different pathways for anaerobic respiration. The first one is called lactate fermentation. It's used by lactobacillus bacteria. It's also used by rabbits and other mammals for quick bursts of ATP. So when you get a cramp in your muscle for a brief period of time. Okay, so let's look at the picture. Here we have our 6-carbon glucose molecule. It comes in, it's energized by ATP. We create 4 ATP, which is really only 2 new ATP because we need to replace the 2 that we used in the first step. We make our 3-carbon pyruvate, we make our 2 NADH, and we need to break down the NADH back to NAD+. We're going to do that by the hydrogens and the electrons from the NADH joining back onto pyruvate, and that molecule rearranges to make a 3-carbon molecule called lactate. So the end product, fermentation, anaerobic respiration, is the lactate 3-carbon molecule, and once the electrons and the hydrogens are transferred from NADH, it reforms the NAD+, and the process can occur again. We can compare this to alcoholic fermentation, which is used by yeast to create bread or beer or wine. And so again, glycolysis is all the same. We have our 3-carbon pyruvate molecule, but pyruvate joins with water, creating carbon dioxide and making a molecule called acetaldehyde, which is 2 carbons. So 1 carbon is lost as carbon dioxide. The acetaldehyde then joins with the electrons and the hydrogens from NADH to create a 2-carbon molecule called ethanol. So the end alcoholic fermentation is different than lactate fermentation. Pyruvate interacts with water, forming a 2-carbon acetaldehyde that then gets the electrons and the hydrogens from NADH, forming a 2-carbon ethanol molecule. It is possible for some anaerobic organisms to have an electron transport chain. They don't have a mitochondria, so the electron transport chain would be in the plasma membrane, and the final electron acceptor is not oxygen, again because it's anaerobic. It would be some other compound in the environment, like nitrate, for example. The ATP yield is still really low though, so you're only making a couple ATP. You're not making 32 ATP like you do in the electron transport chain that's part of aerobic respiration.